Hi, this is Dr. Cheryl McDonald, and you're listening to Health Psychology. In this episode, we'll be discussing health psychology and the chemistry of emotions. Although the psychological treatment methods of emotion research continue to be ongoing, various prevailing points are emerging which manage to promote a viewpoint that many psychologists have long supported. This is not unexpected because the field is continuously discovering how feelings affect perception, reasoning, problem-solving abilities, and the ways people adapt to life circumstances. What investigations present are the biological justifications for the health psychology position in human emotions being biological, psychological, and sociological in quality. This introduction will provide a basic foundation of the role the emotional system has in learning, memory, adjusting, and coping, and the following chapter will provide potential treatment applications of this research. Early historical reports of emotions have been inconsiderate and avoidant. Contemporary neuroscience affirms that those earlier assumptions were wrong, and in these modern times believe that emotions are not trivial indulgences or invaders that interfere with logical thinking, but are the prime organizing methods where awareness, understanding, and memory are established. If the message people sense in a situation fails to evoke an emotional reaction, it will also fail to be regarded as important and will have little possibility of being selected into long-term memory. Investigations are also confirming that for someone to learn new ways of adapting, they must possess a fascination about what they're trying to learn. Love, joy, happiness, curiosity, greed, surprise, anger, sadness, and pride are not ephemeral or baffling states, but are motivators that nudge people to travel in ways that assist with thriving and surviving. Emotions are perceived as elements of man that contribute to people being unreasonable and confused, or they were immoral self-indulgences from which they must purify themselves if they did not want to be driven into performing sinful deeds. The notion that emotion was a sin that needed to be purged through absolution and confession has its roots in the teachings of Plato, and the theory was supported 600 years later for the Church by St. Augustine. Farther along in time, René Descartes is known as being the founding father of modern philosophy, and in the 17th century declared, "I think, therefore I am." His published book, Discourse on Method of Thought, was so compelling that it impacted every philosopher since, and drafted the case that human sensations and emotions interrupted the practice of creating rational, orderly thinking. Moving forward into the 20th century, the judgment of the behaviorist school of psychology, in its attempts to regulate human behavior through punishment and reward, thought the drab realm of emotions were insignificant in the training process. By not realizing that the emotions are valuable to psychological adaptations, some have turned psychiatric practices into shallow mechanical districts, lacking the very emotional care required to create the kinds of reasoning and coping skills the profession so desperately wants to improve. Additionally, the mental health professions have not fully addressed the important relationship between stimulating an emotionally positive experience and how this experience interrelates to overall emotional and physical health. Today, neuroscientific research points to the outcome that without emotion, there is no long-term memory. The information tracked by the brain that has emotional significance is what survives, so people can focus, organize, and retain the information. Study after study verifies that the greater emotional expression an experience stimulates, the easier it is to remember. Joseph Ledoux, 1998, is the pioneering leader in defining emotional circuitry, states, "Emotions, in short, amplify memory." Without the importance of recognizing feelings and incoming information, the world would be a colorless, dull, and unmemorable place. The significant theories of emotions can be classified into three central fields: neurological, physiological, and cognitive. Physiological principles suggest that responses within the body have a direct link to emotions. Neurological doctrines assert that activities within the brain direct emotional responses. Lastly, cognitive theories maintain the belief that ideas and other thinking processes perform vital functions in the production of feeling states. The three theories of emotions. 1. The Schachner-Singer theory. Identified as the two-factor theory of emotion, this is an example of one cognitive theory of emotional response. This approach suggests that the physiological arousal occurs first, and then the individual must recognize the reason behind the arousal to identify the emotion. 2. The James Lange theory. This approach is a well-known example of a physiological theory of emotion, introduced by physiologist Carl Lange and psychologist William James. The James Lange theory implies that emotions happen as an outcome of physiological responses to events and circumstances. According to this theory, people perceive an external stimulus, which in turn creates a physiological reaction. The emotional response depends upon how people perceive the physical effects. For example, imagine someone is driving in the woods when all of a sudden he or she notices the deer in their headlights. They begin to shake, muscles tense, and the heart begins to race. The James Lange theory states that this person will understand their physical responses and decide that they are afraid. I am shaking, my heart is racing, therefore I am afraid. 3. The Cannon-Bard theory. The Cannon-Bard theory of emotion declares that people feel sensations and undergo physiological responses such as sweating, shaking, and muscle tension all at the same time. This physiological theory suggests that emotions occur when the thalamus forwards the information to the brain in answer to a stimulus, causing a physiological response. In the science of the mind, emotion is a combined sense of perceiving that ends in mental and physical transformations that impact thinking and performance. Emotionality has a bond with a variety of psychological phenomena, covering motivation, mood, temperament, and personality. The author David G. Myers, in 2011, writes, personal emotion includes physiological arousal, expressive behaviors, and conscious experience. Emotions are a combined set of interactions, including personal and external factors, mediated by hormonal and neurological processes that generate a feeling and thinking state, leading to the evaluation of the experience. Emotions point to biological changes to the circumstances that spurred the reaction, and frequently to coping styles relating to an individual's mood and behavior. The biological regulators of emotions. The immune and endocrine systems aid in processing emotions, and two integral brain systems share in the regulating duty. 1. The cerebral cortex governs higher functions and manages communications with the outside world. And 2. The brainstem, which is located at the base of the brain, plus the limbic system formations encompassing it, directs people internally, focusing on the emotional, nurturing, and survival needs. The brainstem also monitors spontaneous activity, such as heart rate. The cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex fills 85% of the brain's size and is a large covering of neural tissue that is deeply enveloped around the limbic system. It is arranged into countless amounts of profoundly interconnected and outwardly directed neural interfaces that react in milliseconds to different space-time demands. This system stimulates behavioral replies, offers rational decisions along with collecting, classifying, and deciphering sensory data. When observed from the top, the cortex separates into right and left hemispheres along a path that proceeds straight backward from the nose. An abridged representation of duties of the two hemispheres implies that they concentrate on various viewpoints of an object or experience. The right hemisphere integrates the background data, the jungle, and the left hemisphere analyzes the foreground data, a tree in the jungle. While investigations and research are not precise on the roles of the hemisphere play in emotions, a few patterns are obvious. The right hemisphere appears to represent processing the emotional content of gestures, faces, speech intonation, and volume associated with how something is communicated, while the left hemisphere processes the actual content of language or what is spoken. The right hemisphere also processes information that point to withdrawal reactions, for instance, fear and revulsion, whereas the left hemisphere processes aspects of emotions that point to advancing reactions, like laughter and joy. Thomasville and Dardell in 2011 have implied that the average male brain seems to follow a left design of hemisphere specialization. However, the average female may disperse more emotional processing across the two hemispheres. If he is accurate, these organizational variations may serve to clarify regularly seen gender discrepancies. The cortex is divided into sensory and frontal lobes by a path traced on the head from ear to ear. Frontal lobes concentrate on critical thought and problem-solving ability related to the present, with the forward section of the lobes in command of planning and practicing exercises related to the future. These lobes perform an essential role in balancing emotional states and beliefs. The frontal lobe's management of critical reasoning and problem solving allows it to stop the execution of impulsive behaviors and inhibits someone from committing destructive, illegal, or immoral acts. The limbic system and brainstem react slower, from seconds to months, because it governs fundamental body functions, cycles, and defenses that broadly connect to organs and systems. The reticular formation at the tip of the brainstem integrates the volume and kind of income sensory data into a general level of awareness. The limbic system is formed from many small interconnected networks and is the brain's primary manager of emotions that plays a significant role in processing memory. This system may reveal why emotion is a significant element in memory formation, because it is strong enough to reserve both rational thinking and innate brainstem reply patterns, meaning people tend to follow their emotions. The limbic system's structures that process memory and emotions are the amygdala, the hippocampus, the thalamus, and the hypothalamus. The amygdala is the key limbic system structure implicated in processing the emotional content of memory and behavior. It is composed of two little almond-shaped structures that link the sensory motor systems and automatic nervous system that govern survival faculties such as breathing and heart rate. The amygdala also communicates with nearly all other brain regions. Its primary responsibility is to refine and translate advanced incoming sensory data in connection with survival and emotional demands, and then assists in launching relevant actions. Consequently, the amygdala affects both early sensory processing and higher levels of cognition. For instance, on a cold day, the amygdala may disregard the feel of a warm coat, but reacts to one that does not have a zipper. The brain's amygdala and connecting hippocampus can temper the subjective and objective intensity of the memory. This structure possesses the personal feelings people associate with the experience, and the hippocampus processes the objective conditions, such as area, time, environment, and activities that describe the experience. The hippocampus joins the amygdala that converts significant short-term events into long-term declarative recollections that are then saved in the cortex, the brain. Memories created during a particular emotional state have a tendency to be effortlessly remembered during a related emotional state at a later date and time. For example, during a dispute, people can quickly recall comparable earlier arguments that happened many years ago. This explains why simulations and role-playing exercises heighten learning, since they attach memories to emotional connections that will associate and be utilized at a later date. Today, we're using virtual reality. The limbic system affects the collection and organization of events that the brain stores in two classes of long-term memory. Procedural memories are unconsciously processed skills, such as talking and walking, and declarative memories, which are the conscious recall of facts, such as dates and locations. The walnut-sized thalamus and joining pea-sized hypothalamus are two other major limbic system structures that further regulate emotional and physical safety. The thalamus is the brain's first relay station for incoming sensory data, and it notifies the rest of the brain about what is transpiring in someone's environment. The thalamus has primary bonds to the amygdala and authorizes it to broadcast an immediate but factually restricted statement of a possible threat. This response can trigger a fast, emotionally packed, but possibly also life-saving response before people thoroughly understand what is occurring. It is this system of parts that often carries many volatile outbursts during a typical day. The hypothalamus watches the internal regulatory systems, telling the brain what is occurring inside the body. When the brain has no resolution to a dangerous condition, the hypothalamus can initiate a fight-flight stress reply through its pituitary gland connections that involve the endocrine system. Candle and Candle infer that this process serves as an explanation for repressed memories related to trauma and abuse. The fearfulness related to a traumatic event can begin the release of substances, such as neurotransmitters, like noradrenaline, that increase the attachment in the brain processing the emotional recollection of the experience. Conversely, the painfulness of the event can lead to the discharge of opiate endorphins that reduce connections processing the conscious recollection of the factual conditions surrounding the incident. Consequently, the sufferer has a tendency to shun anything that triggers the fearful emotion, but often does not consciously know why. Many years following a mixture of internal and external factors, a similar place, the behavior of someone, or a feeling may cause the powerful emotional memory to trigger the recollection of the limited factual memory of the initial abuse. Peptides are carriers of feeling states. Throughout antiquity, people have held the belief that there is a disconnection between the mind, body, and brain. The brain monitors body functions, and the body produces maintenance duties for the brain. Scientists at this time believe that there is a unified mind-body-brain arrangement. Oliver Sacks, 2011. The emotional operation that predominantly is in the brain, endocrine, and immune systems is a biochemical process that affects all organs. The emotions and thoughts are the cement that unites the body and brain, and peptide particles are the body's demonstration of this process. Peptide particles, or molecules, are the carriers that lead to the emotional operation. Researchers identify a peptide molecule as being a chain of amino acids that are smaller than proteins, and there are more than 60 kinds implicated in feeling states. Although it is not understood how these molecules offer the data, peptide productions within the body or brain are named hormones and neuropeptides, and if similarly fashioned molecules are produced outside the body or in a laboratory, they are described as being medications. To temper the broad spectrum of feelings such as pleasure and pain, peptides move throughout the body via neural tracts, the circulatory system, and respiratory passages. They intensely influence the choices people make within the continuum of emotionally loading, advancing, and withdrawing behaviors, such as agreeing, disagreeing, marrying, divorcing, drink, urinate, fight, or run. Consequently, the shifts in the body's level of certain molecules indicate emotional response, what people do, when people do it, and how much determination they employ. At the cellular level, peptides manufactured within one cell fasten to receptors on the surface of another, sparking increased or decreased cellular reactions. If this happens in huge groups of cells, it can influence feeling or emotional states. Cell division and protein synthesis are two such activities that are profoundly implicated in the emotionally charged alterations that occur during puberty. A peptide's communication can vary in different areas of the body, just as a knife can be used in various ways to cut meat. In this fashion, peptides are much the same as medications or drugs. For instance, alcohol can stimulate or sedate depending on one's emotional state and the quantity of consumption. The endorphins and cortisol are excellent examples of peptide particles that can, in turn, affect how people experience their world. Whenever the failure to defend danger triggers a stress reaction, cortisol is delivered by the adrenal gland that, in turn, stimulates essential body-brain protective replies that fluctuate with the type and severity of the stressor. Perfected ages ago, when physical perils threatened the survival of man, these stress replies do not distinguish between physical physical and emotional vulnerabilities. Nearly all modern-day stress occurs from emotional disturbances, and many responses frequently are maladaptive. For example, a young child protests going to bed. The angry parent's stress system inappropriately reacts by delivering clotting factors in the blood, raising cholesterol levels, lowering the defenses of the immune system, tenses muscles, and increases blood pressure, along with many other effects. This parental response only makes sense if the rebellious child is also advancing with a rifle. People pay a huge cost for constant emotional tension, physically and emotionally. Even though levels of cortisol create the euphoria that people feel when they are in charge, high levels triggered by the stress reply can produce depression, and prolonged stress can point to problems associated with circulatory, endocrine, digestive, and immune disorders. Chronic high cortisol levels can also damage hippocampal neurons correlated with learning and memory, and short-term stress-related elevation of cortisol in the hippocampus can inhibit the ability to discriminate between details of a memorable experience. Consequently, stressful life conditions decreases one's capacity to live a physically and emotionally content and healthy life. On the positive side, the endorphins are a form of opiate peptide that moderate emotions along the pain-pleasure spectrum because they decrease intense pain and increase euphoria. Endorphin levels can be raised by exercise, by positive social connections, music, meditation, and many other activities that cause people to feel good about themselves and the circumstances in which they live. A pleasant environment that promotes healthy activities will give birth to internal chemical reactions, which will help people discover how to successfully solve challenges in life, such as chronic pain management. Research reveals that the emotional system is a complicated, broadly dispersed, and error-prone arrangement that describes a person's fundamental personality early in life that is very resistant to change. There are larger amounts of neural fibers that protrude from the brain's emotional center into the rational center than the reverse, making emotion a more influential determinant of behavior than the brain's rational methods. For instance, buying a lottery ticket is an emotional, not a rational choice, because the chances of winning are extremely low. Logic may not heed emotion, although it infrequently changes the true emotions on the issue. Emotions allow people to neglect conscious consideration of the problem, and consequently many react too quickly. This reaction may direct irrational fears and unwise ways. Feelings are like color. They exist along a spectrum that has a broad array of measurement in degrees called hues. People can readily recognize common discrete emotions by the usual facial and auditory representations. Still, the power and significance of the emotion will differ among people and circumstances. Furthermore, emotional meaning, like shade of color, may influence the understanding of the feeling. To understand the regularly changing emotional system and its effects on the ability to learn new ways of coping, people must understand this system's components and their functions. Emotions represent an influential function in the way people think and act. It is critical to recognize the three significant elements of emotions. Feelings have a subjective or personal ingredient, meaning how people experience an emotion. They have a physiological element, or how the physical body responds to the emotion, and an expressive part, or how people behave and reply to the emotion, which is often ruled by social norms. These distinctive factors play a role in the implementation and purpose of emotional responses. Emotions can be fleeting, such as bursts of irritation at a peer, or long-lasting, such as lingering grief over the loss of a loved one. Why and for what reason do people have emotions, and how do they exist in living a meaningful, healthy life? 1. Emotions enable us to understand. Personal emotions furnish valuable knowledge to others. The emotional displays of those around us provide social information. Social interaction plays a significant piece in daily life, and being qualified to evaluate and respond to the emotion of others is vital. The ability to evaluate and respond empowers people to react properly and creates a meaningful bond with friends, families, peers, and loved ones. Emotions also allow people to interact productively in a variety of social circumstances, from coping with an angry customer to managing a tearful partner. Charles Darwin was one of the pioneering researchers who carefully studied emotions. He proposed that emotional affectations play a major role that relates to survival and safety. If someone encounters a crouching or growling animal, this may show that the animal is angry and defensive, driving this person to retreat, thus avoiding potential danger. In much the same fashion, learning the emotional signals of other people provides clear knowledge about how to respond to specific situations. 2. Emotions assist us to evade danger, thrive, and survive. Charles Darwin thought that emotions were modifications that permit animals and humans to survive and procreate. If people are angry, they are apt to face the cause of their irritation. If people experience fear, they are also likely to want to escape the situation or threat. If people feel love, they might search for a partner and reproduce. Emotions play an adaptive function in life by driving people to respond swiftly and take steps that will maximize the odds for success. 3. Emotions affect choices. Feelings have a significant impact on the decisions people make, from what they choose to wear in the morning to which profession they choose to have in life. Investigators have also observed that people with specific types of brain injury that reduces their capacity to experience emotions also have a reduced ability to make healthy decisions. Still, in circumstances where people think their decisions were led totally by logic and rationality, emotions performed a fundamental role. Emotional intelligence is the ability to handle and understand feelings that play an influential role in problem solving and decision making. 4. Emotions allow others to understand. At any time when someone interacts with another person, it is necessary to provide signals to encourage them to understand what they are thinking and feeling. Those cues might include emotional expression through body language, such as various hand expressions connected with the emotions people are experiencing. In other examples, this might include directly saying how they are feeling. When people tell someone that they are feeling sad, happy, frightened, excited, or angry, they are providing a valuable message so that the listener can utilize that information to guide their actions. 5. Emotions drive people to take action. If confronted with an anxiety-provoking situation, some might feel performance anxiety. As a result of these emotional effects, some might be more inclined to prepare themselves. This is encountering a distinct emotion that drives people to possess the motivation to take action and do something positive to improve the possibilities of attaining success. Most people likewise favor certain actions in order to feel positive emotions, thereby decreasing the possibility of feeling negative ones. Many explore social pursuits or hobbies that present them with a sense of satisfaction, pleasure, and excitement, and avoid circumstances that drive dullness, melancholy, or stress. Prevention, physical health, and health psychology. The psychology profession stresses the importance of treating the whole person, but treatments tend to concentrate on weighable, objective points. The health professionals measure appetite, sleep patterns, hallucinations, delusions, speech patterns, not emotional health or how life stressors affect symptom development. If the resources get tight, administration cuts mental health services, like emotional health assessments, therapy referrals, payment for services, and psychiatric research. We know emotion is important in psychology and psychiatry because it drives awareness, which in turn urges learning, coping, and memory. However, because the fields do not fully understand the emotional process, people do not recognize precisely how to regulate it or apply it to clinical work, beyond explaining too much or too little emotion as being problematic. Psychiatry has rarely incorporated the effects of emotional experiences people have in life comfortably into their treatment plans, and American society is primed for change. Advancements in the cognitive and neurosciences are opening the locks to the mysteries of how and where the body and brain process emotions. Emotionology is the study of the beliefs or rules that a society or group has concerning emotions and their proper expression, therefore associating with human conduct. This blending of the biology, psychology, and sociology of emotion promises to offer important treatment applications. At this time, contemporary emotion theory and research produce more questions than solutions. However, health professionals should acquire a basic recognition of the biopsychosocial effects of emotions to assist with treating and evaluating upcoming therapy applications. Emotions just exist. People cannot change them easily. They are acquired differently than the way people master practical skills, and neglecting them can create difficulties in life. People can discover how and when to use logical thought to disregard feeling states, or at least postpone expression until a situation is rationally evaluated. All of us can recall earlier disturbances that anger us because of not being permitted to openly verbalize feelings after receiving a negative judgment. Health psychologists and other health professionals should attempt to promote practices of self-control among clients that support non-judgmental, non-disruptive release of emotion that frequently occurs before reason. Here are a few professional tips. 1. Incorporating emotional expression in the therapy session does not have to be a difficult process. Try role-playing a difficult situation to decrease tension, for example, after a client has had an argument with their significant other. Once the client's combined limbic systems have been expressed, rational cortical methods can resolve the problem. In other words, when seeking to determine and resolve a problem, maintain a conversation with continuous emotional information. 2. Most people are already aware of the complexity of emotions and the way in which they and others encounter them, though they may not be capable of articulating what they perceive or understand. Professions in the health field can concentrate further on using metacognitive exercises that stimulate people to discuss their emotions, listen to what others are saying in relationship to feelings, and speculate on the motives of people who are present in their world. For instance, the mere use of a why question shifts the conversation beyond bare details and towards motivations and emotions. For what reasons did your partner start to cry? This type of questioning is much more emotionally charged than ones like, why did your partner start to cry? 3. Exercises that stress social interplay and that encompass the entire problem manage to produce the most emotional comfort. Games, discussions, assessments, interactive techniques, cooperative exploration, visualization, education are just a few examples. Despite the profession being aware for a long time that such exercises intensify client knowledge, they can be overlooked at times in therapy sessions. 4. Memories are dependent on the environment and activities that bring out emotions. Simulations, role-playing, and cooperative projects may provide valuable contextual memory prompts that will assist the clients recall the information during similarly linked experiences in their actual world. This is one reason therapists favor clients practicing communicating a problem without the use of reading their notes on the subject. 5. Emotionally stressful situations are counterproductive since they can diminish anyone's ability to recall information and learn new ways to adapt. Self-respect and a feeling of being in command over one's circumstances are crucial in managing stress. Highly evaluative and authoritarian styles may promote institutional productivity and accountability, but they also intensify non-productive stress. Health psychology and the biopsychosocial approach. The central nervous system and the immune system work remarkably hard attempting to destroy and eliminate stress reactions. The adrenal glands produce the hormone cortisol, which discharges during moments of tension in efforts to diminish the fear. Centuries ago, while hunting for food, humans were subjected to the dangers of being low on the food chain because the animals hunted were often wild and fierce. It was the central nervous system's physical response mechanism that helped to ensure survival. Primitive people would respond to a confrontation from a dangerous animal by fighting if prepared or running away in flight. In modern times, the stress that people experience tends to be lifestyle-oriented, resulting in stress that is a chronic condition and is critically damaging to physical health. Anxiety is a silent killer, causing severe health problems directly related to heart disease, obesity, diabetes, and addiction. Emotions perform a wide variety of purposes. Feelings can be sudden, tenacious, persuasive, complicated, and also life-changing. They propel people to act in unusual ways and provide the means and resources required to communicate meaningfully in social life. Emotions wield an astonishingly influential force on human performance. In conclusion, society needs to consider humanity because we are more than brain tissue, organs, and networks, and powerful emotions transform the body and brain into being a complex, active life force. By applying the biopsychosocial principles in the healthcare system, health professionals can begin to focus on treating the whole person, which in turn benefits physical, emotional, and societal health. This is Dr. Cheryl McDonald of Health Psychology, and thank you for listening to Health Psychology and the Chemistry of Emotions.